Keep track of those questions. We'll have time for those after.
All right. This comes up?
It does.
Yeah, I definitely did not prepare a speech for this one, so I'm just going off the top of my head. I'm John Stepanian. I don't really have anything important about myself. I'm a college student, probably no different from you guys. I got involved in something that definitely took me on a different course in my life. Saying I'm a lot new. In 2001, I was offered a job at WBA's radio station. It's 99.5 FM if you live out in New York City. And there I learned about different things with student activism going on throughout all New York City, from Hunter University to Columbia and whatnot. And I don't know if you remember early on in 2001, the big focus in 2001, 2002 was this war with Iraq was coming up. Everyone knew about it. And little activists, just, Hunter University or whatever, that actually started making the press. People that broke into the UN and the General Assembly and got on TV, or people that snuck on the TRL and were able to say, you know what, this is really going on, and start talking about it. They started becoming not just figureheads within the New York City community of something to follow, but it became like a positive message for everyone to go across with. And I remember February 15th, 2002, where you saw thousands of people out in the streets, saying, no, we're not going to let this happen. Probably the biggest protest in our history. Just if you go around from New York City to Chicago, California, or whatnot. But you don't really get that feeling anymore as it is right now. I mean, the war happened. People really got disenfranchised by a lot of different things. They thought, like, we went all out on this. What did we do wrong? They don't really see what happened. They just think that it just didn't work. And then you felt it even more after the 2004 elections, where George W. Bush was just shot right back in. You saw thousands of people online in Alabama. You saw thousands of the working class coming out voting. Did you actually think they're voting for Bush? I mean, those people don't have jobs. Those people are working. The ones that do have jobs are working their asses off, like 18 hours a day, trying to feed their families. But it went to Bush. At that point, I was working for the Suffolk County Bill of Rights Defense Campaign and the New York State Civil Liberties Union. And that day, we were assigned to monitoring phone calls with people with election complaints, people saying, I couldn't get through, there was a problem. We didn't get a single phone call. Afterwards, we found out there was tons of people trying to call us. We didn't get a single phone call through any of the office branches, anywhere. So it's a sign of oppression, maybe, but it's more of a sign of just shut up. We're not going to listen to you. You can speak, but we're not going to listen. People are kind of getting bored with it, saying, well, if they're not going to listen, what am I supposed to do? So I want to tie this in with a myth that we're all taught. If you go to school, if you went to school here in America, you were taught since the 4th grade the American myth of democracy and freedom, and we're spreading it around the world and whatnot. Starts with George Washington, simple man, fights for the basic cause for everybody. Everyone can support it. Everyone wants the ability to have free speech. Everyone wants the ability to get their views across, not be oppressed. And we think that this whole American Revolution thing was just the epitome of that we were so great, we were the first ones to do it. But we don't really focus on how the slaves didn't have rights, or women didn't have rights, or we killed a bunch of Indians. There was another myth at that time, around 1700, that went along with Manifest Destiny. And it was the idea that we were so great, we had to keep on going out, we had to keep on spreading it. And we finally did spread it around some point in the late 1800s, where we finally did take it all the way down to California. We started going out to Alaska and Hawaii, and we had the Spanish-American border, the Philippines, and we started pushing to Japan a little bit. That's what started the whole World War II thing. But this idea that democracy and freedom as we know it is the best has become our dogma. We don't really question the flaws within our democracy, we don't really question the flaws within our freedom. It's just that we have this better mentality than everyone else. It's that we don't focus that 45 years ago, African Americans couldn't vote in the South. Everyone can vote in this country. It's always been a fact. You don't really question it. So this myth of the perfect America, this myth of we're the good guys and everyone else is the bad guys, we're fighting against something, that has everything to do with this. Because if they're the terrorists and we're the good guys, then they're obviously the evil folk and we're obviously the good folk. And this is some childhood cartoon show Buck Rogers type scenario that we're going across. So everything relies upon a them. And the big thing nowadays is who's the them. The them is the brown people, the them is the Muslims, the them is the South Asians. Some people in some parts of the country think them is Mexicans, immigration. It's them are the bad guys and we're the good guys. And a lot of people don't think they're racist. 10 minutes left. A lot of people don't think that they're racist, but like we all do these things under the table that we say, hey, you know, I don't do anything that's gonna approach the FBI coming into my house. What should I be afraid of hiding? What should I be afraid of, you know, giving over my personal information if it's gonna help fight terrorism? They think it's not me, it's them, so there has to be a them. And therefore it gets accepted by the population. If them was you, then no one would accept it. So this is what a lot of people in my group call the Patriot Act culture. And it's existed way before the Patriot Act, and it's going to exist way in the future, but it's gotten refined since America's finally gotten to this point that we've actually started going to other nations and just saying, do our system or else. We're pushing the Patriot culture across the entire world. So I'm going to bring this back to the 1970s. In the late 1970s, in 1978, we passed a piece of legislation called the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, and it created what was known as the FISA court. It's a secret court with secret judges appointed to it. They can pretty much have the authority of a real court, but no one really knows what they say. This was created in the late 1970s because of fear that the Soviet Union might sneak in a nuclear bomb into the US, and that if an FBI agent were to find this out and have half an hour to do so, he couldn't be afforded to wait time in a normal court and get a warrant. So the original basis was the Soviet Union, the evil empire. But then 1990 came along, the Soviet Union fell, there was no evil empire, and they had all this legislation, and it started to grow then, but they didn't know who to direct it at. And the actual original Patriot Act was written in 1993. And at that point in the Justice Department, they tried to push some congressmen to bring it up, and people were just like, there has to be a lot of American blood on this soil in order for anyone to pass this thing. And in 95 or 96, when Terry Nichols blew up the building out in Oklahoma, they actually tried to get it passed then. Failed miserably. Everyone was like, we're not that stupid, we can't pass something like this. But as time went along, when 2001 hit and September 11th came along, they actually got along and passed it. It was 45 days after 9/11 they passed it. It was 2 hours of debate, happened at 3 o'clock in the morning. I believe one senator voted against it, Russ Feingold. And what it created was this new system of fear. People were afraid of something that happened. They didn't understand why 9/11 happened to the rest of the population. And they thought, hey, the Patriot Act's going to be a tool that we're going to use to combat terrorism. In fact, the name of the Patriot Act is an acronym for Uniting and Strengthening America by providing the appropriate tools to combat terrorism. Now, this was just the first step. At around 2002, I was working for the NYCLU a little bit. In 2003, I started working a lot more. And at that point, we actually started to look in on the Patriot Act and think about maybe New York City can do something to try to amend this act. New York City is a very strong chapter in New York State as a whole. But we're also taking up cases of a lot of families within the New York area who were affected by it. Within a day after 9/11, 3,000 Pakistani males were picked up within the outer boroughs of New York, mostly Brooklyn because that's the central population of the area. And the following month, it ended up being 10,000. These were people that were just walking on the streets, literally. They were in the ages of 20 to 30, males, and the police were just told to pick them up. Some of these people were held for a couple of days, some of these people were held for 9 months. One of the cases that I was helping the lead attorney there, Rudy Offer, with, was a man who had a bodega downtown Manhattan. He only hired Middle Eastern men because I guess he felt more applied to bringing people from his own country. So it's a Middle Eastern man with a Middle Eastern run bodega. And an old lady called up the FBI and said it's suspicious because it's downtown, the economic center of Manhattan, with this Middle Eastern man who was Pakistani and all these Middle